Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where today I'm going to answer a question that I get fairly frequently, and it's a question that Wargaming get almost every week in their live stream. Should the Era 1 FV4005 be nerfed, or should it be moved to Era 2? My short answer to these questions is no. The FV4005 is fine where it is, and in my opinion, anyone who has ever asked one of these questions is barking up the wrong tree entirely. From a top tier and premium tank destroyer point of view, let's break down Era 1. As premiums go, we have the NM116 and the T100. Top tier tech tree tanks leaves us with the FV4005 and the Object 268. The 116 and the 100, most people have them, more people have fought against them. They're not terrible, especially not the 116, but neither one has the reputation of the 4005. Speaking of the 4005, it's iconic. It's basically a Centurion hull with a room just big enough to house a 183mm gun acting as a turret. This is the tank every World of Tanks player has heard about. They've either seen footage of it in game somewhere on YouTube somewhere, or they've been to the tank museum and they've seen it outside, and they're thinking, "Wow, it's just ridiculous. That thing looks ridiculous. It's got a massive gun. It must be just crazy. It must be just absolutely crazy." And yes, in game, it can hit incredibly hard, and that has earned it the reputation that it has in-game. However, there is one tank in Era 1 that I don't think anyone really notices, and that is the Object 268, the tank that you're seeing me play right now. Everybody is so distracted with the 4005, they just will let that shot sink in for a second. Everyone is so distracted with the 4005 that they're completely ignoring the 1 TD in the game that outguns the 4005. And yes, you did hear me right. The 268 outguns and out-armors the 4005. The 4005 hits hard, and that's about it. That's all it can do, really. And, I mean, the 4005, in my opinion, is a very, very good lesson for new players, which is partly why I think it should stay in Era 1. Lesson 1 for new players that the 4005 teaches: wait, don't YOLO. Wait until you know the 4005 is reloading and take advantage of the 23-second reload. Lesson number 2: learn what different types of ammo are used for in the game. You don't like the 4005? Fire only HE at the turret. And we do a casual 800 damage to a Leopard prototype, the 773, And we'll just casually drive off. Anyway, I'll get back on topic. Learn what different ammo types are used for in the game. If you don't like the 4005, fire only HE at the turret. Yes, HE has less penetration, but when you're firing at a target that only has 40mm of turret armor, you'll do max damage with every single shot that you fire. Lesson number 3 for new players: learn the limitations of tanks. The 4005's turret doesn't traverse 360 degrees. All it's got from center is 90 degrees left, 90 degrees right. So, if you combine all of these lessons, what do you get? Well, what you end up with is a 4005 driver who knows that their tank isn't as strong as everybody makes it out to be. All you need to do, and maybe I'm oversimplifying this, but we've got, here, this might be a good, I can't actually remember this game, this is possibly a good example here. I'm reloading, the 4005, I think he just fired, he's popped smoke, so I know it's safe for me to go straight through the smoke, shoot him, ram him, and he's dead. Simple. I say. Obviously, not every engagement is that simple, but you learn what the limitations are of the tanks, and you use those limitations to your advantage. And the 4005 has a lot of limitations, huge number of limitations, and that's where I think people are going wrong with it, because as a driver of the 4005 myself, it's, like I've said, it's not a tank that's as powerful as everyone makes it out to be. Yes, a Hesh round from a 4005 will one bang a low tier light tank. But again, I've had Hesh rounds fired at light tanks that just gets absorbed by the tracks. It happens. And as I mentioned earlier, this, well, yeah, I've mentioned the 268 before, but this leads me on to the tank that I think people should be talking about, and that is the 268. I mentioned earlier that the 268 outguns and out-armors the 4005. The 4005, with my crew and equipment setup, has a DPM of 2,990, and we've just won that game with 6,000 damage and 8 kills. This thing is a very, very capable tank destroyer. It is very, very good. Okay, jumping back to the 4005, yes, it has 2,990 DPM. The Object 268 has a DPM of 3,256. The 268 aims faster, loads faster, is more accurate, and it's got armor. To give you an example, earlier on today's stream, I took the 268 out and a 4005 fired. The shot bounced off my frontal armor. I returned fire and did roughly 800 damage. This happens more than once. It happened more than once on stream, and it's been happening several times during my time grinding the 268. And this is exactly the point that I'm trying to make here, and this is exactly what's got me saying, folks, I think you're all barking up the wrong tree on this one. The 4005 isn't the TD you should be worried about. The 268 is. As a driver of both, the 4005 has to be played cautiously. It has to be played that way, otherwise you get spotted and you get shot at, you've got no armor to bounce anything, you take damage and you're dead. The 268, on the other hand, it has armor. It can bounce shots. And one thing I have actually forgotten to mention at this point is the 4005 has the same, it's the same sort of concealment values as a medium or a heavy. The 268 acts like a tank destroyer. It doesn't have the best concealment, but it has good concealment for what it is. And this is partly what makes it so good. You can get into positions and utilize positions that the 4005 just can't. You can get into a position, you can remain hidden, and when you pull the trigger, because your gun's more accurate, you're likely to hit the target more often than you would with the 4005. And if you miss your shot, it's not so bad because your reload's only 16 seconds long. If you miss, 16 seconds later, next shot goes out and you've done 800 damage. It's not like that in the FV4005. You have to be so cautious in the 4005, because to put it in a, you know, to put it in a different sort of just a different description of the 4005. It's like an animal that can be aggressive, but you know it's not always. It can bark a little bit, it can bite a little bit, but it's not always like that. So you know, don't worry too much about it. The 268, when it's played right, it's an absolute monster, and it's an animal that is aggressive, and it really, really should be respected. More so, in my opinion, than the 4005. It doesn't take much to be on the back foot in the 4005. You know, you get spotted, people shoot at you, the damage is done. There's not much you can do about it. You can't hide because your concealment isn't that great. Your tank is huge. You can't, you know, it's easy to spot. The 268, on the other hand, it's a low profile, it's got decent concealment, and it's got a very, very good gun. This is the tank that people should be worried about, because it's very I've played this a lot, this tank. I like this tank, and it's not very often in this thing that I end up feeling like, oh, I'm on the back foot here, I need to be careful. Like, and this right here in this game is an example of what I'm talking about. I'm not covered. There's a tank. I'm exposing my side to fire from up the hill, but in my head I'm thinking, oh, I'm not really that bothered. I don't really care that much. Whereas in the 4005, my mind would be thinking, right, I need to be careful. I need to hide. I can't just pull the trigger because my shot might miss. All this stuff goes through my head in the 4005, which it never does in the 268. And what you're about to see here is a great example of how my play varies between the two tanks. The 4005 has fired, he's sat back and he's stationary, just waiting for his reload. That's very similar to how I play it. Whereas here, in the 268, my mind is thinking more about, okay, where's my next move going to be? What's my next aggressive push? I fired, the Conway is gone now, but in my head I'm thinking, right, I'm just going to push. And it's always like this in this tank, I'm going to be aggressive. Whereas in the 4005, it's more like, I've fired, now I need to sit back and sit on my hands for a bit because I can't do anything. In the 268, it's a completely different story, and this is why I'm thinking that, you know, when you're pumping out 800 to 900 damage every 16 seconds, well, you know, this thing is formidable. The 268 is the tank that you should be worried about, guys. I'm convinced of it. I'm absolutely convinced of it. This is the TD that deserves your respect. Okay, folks, that's about all I have for this one. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, if not a dislike. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and as always, hope you're all keeping well, and I will see you out there.